Tonight, you're going to sit down for dinner. Maybe it's chicken, maybe it's beef. You'll cut it, chew it, barely think about it. But here's something that probably never crossed your mind. Somewhere out there, a lion just finished its dinner too. And the reason you'll never eat that lion, not the price, not the law, not even the taste, is far stranger and darker than you'd ever expect. The whole story comes down to an invisible rule that governs every living thing on this planet. A rule so ancient it predates humans by hundreds of millions of years. It's called the food chain, but not in the oversimplified way you learned it in school. The real version has teeth, and once you understand how it actually works, you'll never look at your plate the same way again. Let's start with something that sounds like science fiction. Every time a toxin enters the bottom of the food chain, say a tiny bit of mercury dissolved in ocean water, it doesn't disappear, it stacks. A small fish absorbs it. A bigger fish eats thousands of small fish. A predator eats hundreds of those bigger fish. By the time you reach the top, that original trace of mercury has been concentrated up to 1 million times. Scientists call this biomagnification, and it's already reshaping what you're allowed to eat. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration already warns pregnant women to limit their intake of predatory fish like tuna, fish, not lions, not wolves. Now imagine eating an animal that spent 10 to 15 years at the very peak of that pyramid, accumulating every toxin from every creature it ever consumed. But here's where it gets interesting, because you might be thinking, okay, but surely you could just cook it out. That's not what you think it is. Heat doesn't touch mercury. It doesn't dissolve methylmercury or polychlorinated biphenyls, the industrial chemicals that seep into ecosystems and ride the food chain all the way up. These compounds are fat-soluble, meaning they don't flush out with water. They embed themselves in tissue, in fat, in organs. Cooking a lion doesn't purify it. It just makes something dangerous warm. And it's not just chemical toxins. The Centers for Disease Control formally lists bear, wolf, fox, wildcat, walrus, and seal as high-risk meats for a parasite called Trichinella, a microscopic worm that builds up inside carnivorous hosts over a lifetime of eating other meat. Here's the part that should make you pause. Smoking doesn't kill it. Drying doesn't kill it. Curing doesn't kill it. Even microwaving, the thing people do to make sure, doesn't reliably kill it. The parasite burrows into muscle tissue and just waits. Inside you. The health consequences include neurological damage, kidney failure, reproductive disorders, and in serious cases, cancer. Let that sit for a second. The body you're living in right now was never designed to process this. Now here's the angle almost no one talks about, the economics of it. You already know that eating higher on the food chain costs more. Beef is pricier than grain. Lobster is pricier than sardines. But do you know why? It comes down to what ecologists call the 10% rule. Every time energy moves from one level of the food chain to the next, 90% of it is lost, burned off as heat used for movement, digestion, survival. Only 10% transfers upward. So a field of grass might produce 10,000 calories. The cow that eats it passes on only 1,000. The tiger that eats the cow, 100 calories. To raise a single predator large enough to feed even a few people, you would need to feed it hundreds of prey animals who each needed to eat thousands of plants. The math doesn't just get expensive, it becomes absurd. And there's something even more fundamental lurking beneath all of this. Something about what these animals actually are physically that makes them almost inedible even if you solved every other problem. Predators are built for one thing, killing. Their entire body is engineered for speed, strength, endurance. That means dense, iron-rich muscle fiber, almost zero fat marbling, and tissue saturated with urea, the same compound found in urine, along with byproducts of the decaying flesh they constantly consume. People who have eaten bear meat describe the taste shifting dramatically based on what the bear ate. Berry-fed bears are mild, almost tolerable. Bears that fed on fish, described as genuinely foul, tough, stringy, dry, with an aftertaste that lingers. And bear is considered one of the better predator meats. Now imagine something that spent its entire life eating nothing but other carnivores. What if the reason predator meat is so hostile to your body isn't a malfunction? What if it's memory? Your digestive system, your immune response, your entire metabolic architecture was shaped over hundreds of thousands of years. And for the vast majority of that time, your ancestors instinctively avoided the top of the food chain, not because someone told them to, but because every time they didn't, something went wrong. The nausea, the toxicity, the parasites, maybe those aren't random misfortunes. Maybe they're your body doing exactly what it was built to do, protecting you from a category of food it learned, long ago, was never meant for you. There's one more layer to this that almost nobody considers, and it's the biggest one. Predators don't just sit at the top of the food chain, they hold it together. When wolves were removed from Yellowstone National Park in the early 20th century, deer populations exploded. They overgrazed, vegetation collapsed, riverbanks eroded, and the rivers themselves, the actual physical rivers, changed course. Scientists call this a trophic cascade, the removal of one predator unraveling an entire ecosystem from the top down. From wolves gone, to deer multiplying, to plants stripped bare, to rivers bending. A keystone pulled and the whole arch fell. That's what eating predators at scale would mean. Not just a meal, an unraveling. So tonight, when you sit down at that table, the chicken on your plate represents something your ancestors figured out across millennia, not just through culture but through consequence. What's not on your plate represents something else entirely. A boundary written into the biology of this planet, reinforced by chemistry, by ecology, by the very architecture of your own body. You didn't choose to avoid lion meat. Something much older than you made that choice, and then made sure you'd never question it. The most ordinary dinner you've ever eaten turns out to be the result of one of the most sophisticated survival systems ever built.